Okay. Boker Tov. Today's daf is Ayin Dalit 74. We're in the middle of a classic section of Agadata around, sea stories, but obviously sort of going even further, and some of the more fantastical Agadatas in the Gemara. And we pick up at the bottom of Ayin Gimel Amud Bet. And it's Amar Li, last line of Ayin Gimel Amud Bet. This is about Rabbi Bar Chana that said that he once encountered an Arab Bedouin, and here are some of the things that this Bedouin showed him, some mysteries and some secrets for people who knew the wilderness and the desert and so on. So Amar Li, he said to me, Ta'achvi lecha, come, let me show you Mesei Midbar, those who died in the desert. Those the Bnei Yisrael that died in their 40 years of wandering. I know where they're buried. So Uzli Chazitinahu. We went. He showed them to me. Vidomu Command Mivsmi. They looked like they were a little drunk. That's what the Rajbam does. Like they had a smile on their face. Okay, Viganu aparkid, and they were lying down on their back. Actually, there's an interesting debate whether aparkid means on their front or on their back. But based on this Gemara, because he was seeing, he could see their face, it seems very clear that it means they were lying on their back. Okay, Vahavi Zikifa Barche Dechad Minayu. Now, one of them, their knees were raised. Their legs were raised. Their knees were raised. Va'ayil Taya Tusei Barche. And a nomad was able to go under their raised leg. I mean, they were apparently now they were like giants. They were gigantic. Ki rachiv gamla v'zikifa rumche, riding a camel with his like spear, upright. Okay, so he had like a 50-foot clearance. Okay, so here you had like the bent knee of one of these people who died in the wilderness, and there was a sign above that said clearance 50 feet. And then the camel rider with the spear was able to go under it. Okay, below Nagabe, and didn't bump into it. Below Nagabe. Paski chad karna dechad minayu. Now, I figured, heck, as long as I'm here, it's all very wondrous and all of that. But what's most important is let's see if we can learn some halacha from how they acted. So what I did was I cut off the corner of one of their tzitzis in order that I could see, like, how was it that they made tzitzis? Okay, tzitzis is one of the things in the Torah. I mean, there's a few, obviously, but like the Torah defines it in like one word. Vasulachem tzitzit. Right, like that says knaf to seal techeles, the corner or a string of techeles. But anyway, it's like a lot. Why not go to the people who actually first experienced the command and go ahead and see how they made their tzitzis? So paski chadakana de tchelta de chad minai. I cut off the corner of one of their literally techeles is the blue string, but one of their tzitzit in order to take it back, so we could have some evidence about what they did. Maybe you also want to see how they made techeles. Okay, I mean, in the time of the Gemara, they knew how to make techeles. And we weren't able to travel forth. Now, based on before that it said that they were gigantic, maybe it was too heavy. It was like the grapes. You needed maybe 10 spies to 8 spies to carry it or something.
No,
anyway,
he didn't want because he stole something.
I know. So anyway, but it's not going to be about its weight. Amarli. So this Arab nomad said to me, "Dilma shaklis midi minayu." Like we for some reason we were felt like we were glued to our place. So then he said to me, "Is it possible you tried to take something from them?" Why? Because apparently he didn't know initially. Ahadre, go put it back. The Gemiri, we have a tradition. Demand shakel midi minayu. If somebody takes something from them, lo mistagile, he won't be able to go. He won't be able to move. Asli, I mean, I guess you can move somewhat. You were able to
take from whom?
From the dead of the from the dead Bnei Yisrael that died in the wilderness.
Tzitzis off the corpse.
Off the corpse, yeah.
Uh-huh.
He took the tzitzis off the corpse of one of the bodies. Okay, and then he said, "Oh, that's why we can't move forward because we have a tradition." It's sort of like the same way the pharaohs in their tombs. If you were to raid the tombs, like you're cursed. So here too, you've got the dead of the wilderness, and if you try to take anything from them, you'll be stuck in your place.
So they didn't puzzle the tzitzis when they buried them dead the way we.
So I'm going to talk about that. That's what the big Tosas is about. Asli, I went ahadrise. I returned it. The tzitzit to the corpse. V'hadr mistagilan, and then we were able to move forward. And then when I came back to the rabbis in the academy, in the base medrash, they said to me, Ko Abba Chamra. Now his name was Abba Bar Chana. So they sort of mocked me. Rabba Bar Chana, excuse me. Rabba Bar Bar. But Rabba is Rav Abba. So his actual first name was Abba. Okay, so they said to me, they were mocked me. They said, "Ko Abba Chamra." Every Amra, Abba is a donkey. Okay, or so, and obviously there's like it alliterates. Rabba Bar Chana, Abba Chamra. Okay, so you can sort of see that's what the kids at the schoolyard used to call me. Instead of calling me Rabba Bar Chana, they called me Abba Chamra. Okay, so anyway, every Abba is a donkey. We call Bar Chana Sichsa, and every Bar Chana is a fool. Okay, so you're a donkey and a fool.
Foolish donkey.
Okay, that was a stupid thing you were trying to do. Okay, so why? For what purpose were you trying to cut the tzitzit and to bring it? There's all these debates between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel how to make tzitzis. So you wanted to see how they paskin. It's just like when we now recovered the tefillin in Masada. So we figured, now we can know if they have that. Was like Rashi or Rabbeinu Tam, and they found both pairs of tefillin. Right. I'm serious. They did in Masada. In terms of this, it was an ancient debate about what are the order of the parshios. So maybe they would have found the same thing. Then he should have said you shouldn't just take one pair of tzitzis. You should have taken a sampling already. So we could have seen. Anyway, why did you want to take it to know whether it's like Beit Hillel or Beit Shammai? So then, so if that's true, then even if you weren't able to take it and you had to return it, you should have counted the number of strings and counted the number, the chulios are like the wraps around, the twists around, you do with the main string, the sections of wrappings, you should have counted it. So presumably you should have counted it. What they were saying was, but if you were going to restore it, then, it's not like all or nothing. Like, don't bring back the evidence or don't have anything to tell us. Like, before you restored it, you could have taken some notes. You could have, reported it to us. Oh, so that's the...
could have taken a picture with it.
By the way, raises interesting questions, right, about about the development of halacha. How much can we use archaeology and history to determine halachic question, right? Like, let's say, going back to this case about, of Masada, so they measured the size of the mikvahot there because obviously water was scarce. So obviously the assumption is that the mikvah is only going to be the bare minimum size. And based on that size of a mikvah, you can now know the size of a lot of shiurim, how they were assessed at the time of Beit Sheni. So how much does that sort of define halachic issues, right? How much does archaeology, history, whatever, define halachic issues? Is it an acceptable source? How much does the sort of halachic, legal truth work independently of historical truth, etc.? So anyway,
DNA evidence, supplant take the place of Shneidim, right?
Well, but that's like a different question. This sort of recognizes that the way law develops might, there might be what becomes canonical, what becomes paskind, right? If we wind up having a debate of Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai, we paskin one way, and then there was evidence, like nothing Beit Hillel, but then there was evidence that 2,000 years ago the practice was like Beit Shammai. Does it mean Beit Hillel's wrong, or does it mean historically that's the way it was, but now we paskind otherwise? So I think this is just interesting in terms of. Obviously it's an agadah, but the assumption of it is interesting. Yes.
You have a similar issue with when a manuscript that was thought lost is rediscovered.
Right, exactly. What manuscripts become canonical? What if we find, that there have been mistakes in manuscripts? There's all these interesting questions of science and halacha and history and halacha. Okay. Anyway, now, what I did do, what I will share is Tosos, which is a halachic analysis of this. But David, you want to share with us what your footnotes say about?
Is it Maharsha?
Maharsha, yeah.
Those are the Torah given its son must be surrounded by a fence, safeguard against any transgression.
Yeah.
consists of rabbinical enactments. Oh, this is about the scorpion. I'm sorry.
Oh no, we're not there yet. We're
I'm
not
sorry.
up to any
No,
scorpions yet.
This just had notes about. It didn't have an.
It didn't have any like metaphoric
I
explanation
didn't see
about
it,
this
no.
whole story.
No, I just-
I mean, the question about how big they were obviously suggests the question, about like their spiritual greatness, which is like a common trope and a common theme,
So even their
right? I know
meaning
about
was-
stealing or taking something from them and not going forward. It seems to have some like metaphoric possibilities, which is funny, right? Because like we take, if you think about it, with the Masorah, we have passed down from them that allows us to move forward. But why is it taking some physical artifact? Doesn't allow us. Maybe that part gets to this question that I'm raising about, how much is halacha rooted in historical evidence of the past, as opposed to the ability to move forward and, the development, ongoing Torah Shabbat and development of halacha. Is that we're not, rooted in the past. We sort of start on the, we start in the past. We are rooted in the past. We start in the past, but we're not sort of limited to that. And then we're able to sort of move forward from there. So, yes.
It's a contradiction.
Right. How do you Chadesh Kedem? Right. Exactly. So maybe that's this about don't we shouldn't be buried with the past, right? We have to sort of be rooted in it but move forward. So Tosfos raises this whole issue of the tzitzis. Because according to the evidence in the Gemara, it seems to be that they buried the dead with the tzitzis, and this seems consistent with this. Although Tosa says this is not really evidence to that, because the famous story about how they died in the wilderness was that they dug their own graves and they went to lie down, and then some would get, and then the next morning some would get up and some would stay buried. So since they were lying down with their clothes, while they were still alive, they still had their tzitzis on. So this Gemara is not direct evidence that they would bury the dead with their tzitzis, but Tosa says there are other Gemaras that seem to say that. And the problem is that the minhag was that actually the opposite, that you tear the tzitzis from the garment, you don't bury the dead with the tzitzis. So Tosfos wants to know how to sort of reconcile those two. One basic answer, which Tosfos sort of alludes to here, but he says elsewhere, is that it's a difference between a Bavel practice and an Eretz Yisrael practice. The Bavel practice was to bury the dead with the tzitzis. The Eretz Yisrael practice was not to, and Ashkenazim in particular are sometimes influenced by Eretz Yisrael practices, even when they're diverged from the Bavli. But Tosfos here, if you want to see some answers in this, Tosfos says the following. It's like if you see the line that like halfway down the narrow line in Tosfos, the line that begins with the parentheses, Shabbos Taf Lamed. Okay, so you go one line down from there. You see those parentheses that begin with that line. He says, how is it that we remove the tzitzis, given that the evidence in the Gemara is that you would bury the dead with the tzitzis? The tzitzis olet tafresh, the commodity of tzitzis is 600. The chet chutin v'hei ksharim, and the 8 strings and the 5 knots. Have taryad. So tzitzis, the tzitzis are supposed to remind you of the Torah, of the mitzvot. So they would bury them as a sort of symbolically saying this person was makayim all the mitzvahs of the Torah. So now we're not at the same madrega. So that's one explanation. How maybe the minhagim changed, and it gives some explanation why the minhagim changed.
The minhag changes?
Yeah, exactly. So like if you're like perfect or something. Okay, so that's one answer. It changed because we no longer can make a statement like we're Mekayim Kol Tar Kula. Now here's another explanation. These are very interesting because they basically, a number of them, rather than sort of saying geographic, Pavli, Shalmi, suggest a historic change, a change in history over time. Everybody would regularly wear tzitzis because their standard garments had 4 corners. Right? Technically, there's no obligation to put on a garment with 4 corners with tzitzis. It's if you're wearing a 4-cornered garment, you put tzitzis on it. So he said, then everybody, that was the standard garment. So if your standard garment, if it's not just a ritual garment, if your standard garment has 4 corners, then you have to put tzitzit on it. It's like you have to make sure your garment doesn't have shatnez, and you have to make sure that if it's got 4 corners, it has tzitzis. So it wasn't sort of a ritual garment. It was just what you do on a normal garment. So burying people in their tzitzit, it's a very interesting insight. Burying people in their tzitzit was not, we're going to bury them with this ritual, thing called the talis. We're just burying them in their clothes, but their clothes happen to have tzitzis on them. Of course, the funny thing is, like even the tachrichim, like even the shrouds were 4 corners, maybe, if their standard sort of garments were 4 corners. But anyway, but it wasn't seen as much as an intentional burying with a ritual item. Nowadays, many people don't wear tzitzis in general. Now, that seems not only like their standard garments didn't have 4 corners, but it seems like a lot of people might have spent their whole lives and saying, I never wore a garment with 4 corners, so I never had to put on tzitzis. So now that it is very widespread that people don't wear tzitzis, not because they're violating, but because they're not wearing those types of garments, even if there was somebody who did wear tzitzis in his life, not to make that person stand out. So it's interesting. It's basically, whether he's sort of saying this difference about, is it seen of as a ritual garment or stama garment, or is he sort of saying, at a time when everybody wore tzitzit, we bury people with tzitzit, now that it's rare, it would sort of, mark a difference between people in their death. So we don't want to sort of do that. I also wonder what he means that he says people don't wear tzitzit. Did he mean like even when they even when they davened? It's an interesting question, right? When the practice came to wear like dafka talit l'tzarech tefillah. There's a lot about being nit'atef b'talit when you're davening already in the Gemara. So exactly. Certainly the shaliach tzibur would.
I wish I could remember. I was just looking at it. I don't remember exactly what period, but from pretty early on that shows people wearing, or it shows. I think the earlier ones showed just the shliach tzibur were wearing,
right,
and then the later ones show everyone
wearing. Interesting. So that's what we were sort of saying, like mitate at least the shliach tzibur, whatever. So certainly, like during tefillah la'ani ki ya'atov. Okay, but of course that doesn't necessarily have to mean being otef with a talit. It could just mean wrapping yourself with whatever garment or whatever. But anyway, it's interesting hearing Tosa say, "Oh, nowadays there are people that don't wear tzitzis in their lives." Right? Does he mean ever? Does he mean
Well, that gets it. Why bother wearing a talit gadol? I wear a talit katan all the time.
Yeah.
I'm fulfilling mitzvahs.
Well, that's a different story.
No,
according to many Gonim, you're not
you're
yotze with a talis katan because it's not a real garment. That only a garment that you wrap yourself with is considered to be a full garment. So yeah.
But there's also then beg the question if there are really certain communities where like everyone wears tzitzit.
Yeah.
Then would you be able to bury people?
Yeah. So right. So then maybe could change back. Yeah, Rabbi, what do you want to say?
No, just first, my understanding was that the talit gadol during tefillah is a way of giving more kavod to the tefillah, the Beit Knesset.
Right.
Right. Also, Sfaradim say he to take patzitzit.
Yeah, exactly.
Over their head.
Yeah.
Why did they puzzle with the tzitzit?
What was the idea of like wearing them and then ripping them off? Like that's.
I don't mean the story, but I mean in the general.
I know that's interesting. It's one thing to say you don't bury with tzitzit. It's another thing to say you bury and then you rip it off. And clearly, there's obviously a powerful symbolic statement of like the statement in the Gemara, "Kivan shemet adam naaseh chofshi min mitzvot." Right? When you die, you now are free from mitzvot. Like it's sort of saying it's also very symbolic. It's almost like tearing kriya. Something is being ripped from you and the mace is being sort of ripped from the life of the living and a life of mitzvot. So it's a powerful symbolism there. To me, it's actually it's a little spooky thinking about burying somebody in their tzitzit. It's a little too, I don't know, like what's it supposed to say? They're going to die and they're going to go up to heaven and still be wearing tzitzit. Exactly. It's like the whole point about like you bury in a in a wood box, everything sort of it's exact opposite of preserving. It's all about restoring to the earth. Now, one of the ideas that Tosa said is that the idea is, well, if at time of Tchiyat HaMetim, the tzaddikim are going to rise up in the garments that they were buried in, so they want to be able to rise up with their tzitzis on.
Yeah, but now you cut it off, it won't help.
Well, now he's talking about the original practice. So it's interesting to think about sort of the different types of symbolisms there. Let's just read a little bit more. I'll just read one. If you go down a little line, he says, "Anu samchina masechet smachot It's sort of like 10 lines from the bottom where it says there in parentheses Perek Yud Bet.
We have this Masechet Tzmachot.
Yeah, we have some Masechet Tzmachot, which is like a Geonic work, the Amrina or whatever. It's a collection of earlier work. It was.
Why'd you skip the Nida thing?
If you want to, we could read it. It was just not
I'm just
directly
curious.
relevant.
Always wants to read more.
All right, fine. I'll read it then. Okay, he says like this. אבל אל תשב, אין לעשות, אפילו מי שהיה לו בחייו, שלא לבש מי שאין לו. כי עניין זה מצינו פרק בסטרה דנידה, ראשון היה מטבילים כלים על גבי נשים נידות מתות. So they would used to immerse women who had died while they were in nida. They would immerse them before burying them. And while we're doing an immersion, we might as well do our tefillas kelim at the same time. That caused an embarrassment for the live women. Anyway, so what tells us, without going into that, if you're interested, you could look at that. Anyway, he's just sort of making a statement about not to make differences during death. Okay, in certain rituals during death. All right, you know what? That's why I didn't read it. V'odanu somkin al Masechet Tzmachot Amrinan Abishol ben Bitnis Tziva et Bnav Kivru Tachas Margelotav Shel Abba V'tilu Tcheles Me Apiloni. So and put now the question is there's a V'tilu Tcheles normally means put tzitzit. Right. But then it should be bit on piloni in my piloni in my garment, but the mea piloni, so perish mi talito, the yeshli grows hitiru, not put chelas but remove it. So we rely ourselves on Masechet Tzmachot, which maybe does also say put on tzitzit, but we're going to read it to say take off the tzitzit. Okay, midekamer may from. So anyway, maybe there's a different source, and that's sort of an indication that it's maybe a Bava tradition as opposed to an Eretz Yisrael tradition. Bava tradition with the tzitzit, maybe an Eretz Yisrael tradition without. And here would be the idea of actively removing. Okay, Rabbi Chaim Kohen Tzedek Pirish, the non Kaimelan Reb Yochanan, the Amar Mitzvahs Betelos Lasid Lavo. The reason why we tear the tzitzit is because in the future, in the time of Tchias HaMesim, there won't be any mitzvahs anymore. So that's a pretty wild theological statement. There'll be no mitzvot in the time of Yemos, in the future Yemos HaMashiach when the dead rise up.
That's why
so they're going to not need their tzitzit when they rise up. So that's why you remove them.
The whole thing.
Yeah. So this and the other Gemara, it says that you bury the dead with their tzitzit. Is Ari Aliba to Shmuel, the Amar Ematelos, that says that in the future when they rise up, the mitzvahs will still be in practice. And therefore you need the tzitzis. Because they're going to rise up with the garments that we're burying. Then when they rise up, they won't have the tzitzit. Okay, and then he goes on, and that's basically
it doesn't make no sense at all.
Because we actively remove them.
Right, either with or without.
I understand. I think the symbolism of actively removing them is very powerful. But the point is you have to make work together with the indications in the Bavli that they used to bury the dead with their tzitzit.
Rabbi Linzer.
Yes.
This phrase, Tzivat banav kavruhu tachar margelotav shel Abba.
Yeah.
Meaning what? That's like the way the grave was organized?
I think so, like in the kuch and the
kuch itself.
Yeah, exactly.
But then he says in Minhag Ashkenaz, Asim tzitzit b'talit shomeit. Doesn't he say that? Did you say that?
Where?
The last line that's also kind of Asim tzitzit b'talit shomeit.
Wait a minute. No. You have to read the line before. Vale Ramina shemasimin tzitzit umisalkin oto miyad. When he has mesimim, means mesimim and then remove.
But not cutting a corner.
Right, probably not cutting. Maybe not cutting a corner. Okay, back to the Gemara. Okay, since I don't have a good explanation of the Agadata, I decided we'll learn some
I'm just going to tell you. I'm just going to officially see. Go put this on the recording.
Yes.
This was the strangest minhag ever. Like, she just died in Nida.
Yes.
Let's bring the colander and the frying.
Yes, I know that.
Are you kidding me?
Okay, moving on. When we learn Nida, we can discuss it more. Moving on. Okay, so the Gemara says like this. Okay, I'm Amalek. Back to the Gemara. About 10 lines down, 10 lines from the top. Amarli, whatever. This Arab nomad said to me, come, let me show you Mount Sinai. Okay, that was also in the wilderness, in the desert. Azli Chazai, I went, Chazai, the Hadole Akrava, that it was surrounded by scorpions. The kaima kichamri chivrasi, and they were they were these huge scorpions the size of white donkeys.
Oh, white donkeys are particularly vicious.
Oh, that's right.
If a
White donkeys are
bites you,
vicious.
you never recover.
Exactly. That's correct. The Gemara says you don't recover from the bite of a white donkey. Shamis Baskol Shomers, and I heard a heavenly voice saying, "Oili shenishpati, woe to me that I took an oath, that because of the oath that I took. And now that I, God, have taken this oath, who can annul it for me?" So what else are we talking about? When I came back to the rabbis in the base medrash, Amrli, they said to me, Kol Abba Chamra, and here we have the donkey already mentioned in this story. So this again, Rabbi Bar Barchana. Every Abba's a donkey, the Kol Bar Barchana Sichsacha, and every Bar Barchana is a fool. Now, I'm guessing, by the way, they said the reason Kol was so that they weren't directly calling him a name. They were just making a statement about the class, right? Not about him personally, but anyway, saying you were an idiot. So God was asking somebody to be matir his neder. You could have been matir God's neder. So
it would have been a little presumptuous.
So the Gemara says, well, yeah, God was inviting it. What? Exactly. Who saw now? Rabbi Bar Barchana, who wasn't matir God's neder, thought Dilma Shvuasa de Mabulhu. What neder, what shvua are we talking about? So he thought maybe it was God's shvua that he was not going to bring another mabul to the world. So he didn't want to matir that neder. Maybe God was so angry with people's deeds that God wanted to flood the world, and he wasn't going to participate in letting God do that. For Rabbanan and the rabbis, what shvua did they think God was talking about? So, why was he saying woe to me? Clearly, God would not feel woe that he could not wipe out the world. So it must be something that God is pained about. So the Rashbam says, I think the standard explanation is that it's about that to send the Bnei Israel into exile. So God suffers together with the suffering of Bnei Israel, and he feels and he empathizes, and that's why it's woe to me about that shvua. So, by the way, two things about this. Number one is, Tosos has an interesting discussion about whether, the assumption of this Gemara is that you need another party to matir neder. Okay, but Tosos quotes another Gemara that sounds like at least God could matir his own neder. So do you always need another party to matir a shvur or neder? Number one. But I also want to say that it's not in this Gemara per se, but the idea that a human being could matir God's neder. There is one of the most, wild or radical midrashim is, it says by the pasuk, I forget if it's on the Parsha of Hatars Nedarim or it's, anyway, but when it says, the pasuk that says, Moshe Ish HaElohim, Moshe, the man of God, it reads the word Ish as husband. And it says Moshe is God's husband, which is already fascinating because it casts God as the female, and says the same way a husband can matir his wife's neder and shvuas, Moshe could matir a shvua that God took. Okay, so it says Isha Yikimenu v'Isha Yifirenu. So therefore, and then it leads to a whole idea about tzaddik goes there, v'kadosh baruch hu mekayim, and anything God says that tzaddik can override based on this, like Moshe Ish Elohim. So it's interesting again the idea that a human being could be matir God's neder. Yes.
Who's taking him to see Mount Sinai? The same nomad.
The nomad, the Arab nomad.
So he took him to the Meitim of the Midbar.
Yes.
And then the Chachamim criticized him.
Right.
Then he said, "Okay, forget these Chachamim. Let's go someplace else."
Yeah.
So is that what it sounds?
Yeah, I know he said forget these Chachamim or whatever, but yeah.
No, might have been all on the same.
These might have all been the same trip. But then I don't know if these were separate travels or all one travel, but whatever.
He keeps on going to these different places with the nomad.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, moving on. All right.
What do you
So
make of that?
about the white scorpions, I don't know, David. What did your notes say about the white scorpions? All right, you'll take a look. You'll tell us. All right, now we go on. All right, moving on. The Rabbanan, by the way, it does say me Mayfair, and Mayfair is about a husband and a wife. Hataras Nedarim is about a beis din. So again, I do wonder whether it has echoes of that midrash of Moshe Ish Elohim.
And he could be Mayfair a Shavua because he was at Mount Sinai. What's the connection between?
I don't know. You mean why was the shvua? I was wondering that too. Why was the shvua about Galus being heard at Har Sinai? You would think the shvua. I understand maybe because they didn't keep Torah mitzvahs, but you would also think that the shvua would be heard at the Har Bayis, right, which is something that represents the Chorban. But anyway, yeah, David, what do you have there?
It refers to the rabbis who protect
The Torah.
But be careful that you warm yourself by the fire.
Oh, right, and their bite is harsh, whatever. Okay, but yeah, because I mean, actually, that midrash about the chachamim and like the bite of a scorpion, the sting of a scorpion. Okay, next story. Okay, so the Gemara says like this. Where were we? Let me go show you the people that were of Korach's camp that were swallowed up in the earth, like where the earth swallowed up Korach's camp. Chaza trey bize. So I saw two cracks in the ground. Bahave kamavki kutra, and smoke was rising out of it. Shakil Gvava da Amra. So what I did was, to see how hot it was down there, is I took like a
coal.
Amra's wool.
No, Amra's wool. I took like a clump of wool. That was what I was for. A clump of wool. The Amshina b'maya, and I sort of submerged it in water, soaked it in water. Vida atzita berosha derumcha, and I sort of stuck it on the top of a pole. The eilehosam, and I lowered it down there. And when I brought it up, it was singed. So clearly, it's pretty darn hot down there. So now this nomad said to me, "Atzitz, my shamis, go listen closely to what's being said." Okay, so Vishamis, and I heard Davi Amrin that they were saying, those that were down there and that were burning in the fire down there, they were saying Moshe v'Toraso emes, Moshe and his Torah is truth. Vehain, and they, meaning we, the people speaking, Badoim, were like our liars, our forgers. So this is, in the end, obviously, because they challenged Moshe's authority, and here they are in the not only getting punished for their sins, and obviously it's also very graphic, this whole imagery that we normally associate more with like a Christian imagery of hell, sort of down there, they're burning for their sins, right? But anyway, but not only are they being punished, but they're also acknowledging. It's sort of like, what is it, like 1984 or whatever, where these totalitarian regimes that before they execute you, they make you confess your crimes, right? So anyway, so here they are.
The Inquisition did that.
What?
The Inquisition tried to do that.
Oh yeah, I got people to confess. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so here they were. They're admitting the truth of Moshe.
Can one infer from your Gemara's view about in general, it may be an exception because these were Blue Korach, so they were rebellious, but in general, what do you think happens to people? If hell's permanent.
Well, right, but this isn't exactly hell. So let's look at the next line. Amarli, so then this shepherd, this nomad said to me, Kol Tlosin Yomin, every 30 days, they actually, most of the time they're in Gehenna. They're not here. This is in Gehenna. This is in the depths of the earth, the earth has a molten core or something. Most of the time they're somewhere else. They're wherever Gehenna is. Okay, but once every month they come back here to the place of their sin. And to sort of acknowledge and and acknowledge their sin. The same way, every now and then you turn over a piece of meat that's boiling in a pot. Okay, you got to get it, both sides. You got to get it, whatever. So it sounds like actually this might be, I don't know, hotter than Gehenna. It's not exactly clear to me how the
it's always this way. Just that, and it rotates around the earth, and now you can hear it here.
Maybe you mean the word mahadir. But maybe. But I sort of meant that they are sort of, you're right. Like, what does it mean to be turned over? Anyway, I'm not exactly sure. Okay, anyway, moving on. And then they say this once they arrive here. Moshe v'Torah emes ve'im b'doim. Okay, Amrli, he said to me, I'm going to show you where heaven and earth kiss, where there's a point that's so high that you actually get access to the heaven. All right? So, kiss one another, touch one another. So I was somewhere up there on some mountain, we're very high ups in the Himalayas or whatever, okay, and I had access to the heavens. You have to understand that they understood, right, that the heavens were, this rakia was some type of this physical, dome, right, that covered the earth. So here he is, he's on some mountaintop, okay, he's on some mountaintop. And here is this physical dome, this rakia, that is, he's able to actually touch it. Okay? So, shaklasa l'sil ta'ai. So I took my bread basket, my knapsack, I had to put it down. Asnachta b'chavasa rakia. And I put it, there was a little hole right here, right? You know, like the pasuk says by the Mabul, the Chol Arubot Hashamayim Niftachu. So there was a little window there, which I don't know, maybe rain comes down, whatever comes down through that window. And I said, oh, good, I need to put my knapsack down somewhere. So I put my knapsack down here, okay, and in that little hole. And then Adimatzlina, now I had to put it down because I had to daven. I mean, what better place to daven than when you're right next to heaven, okay? Again, I don't know if the association of Rakia, I'm a little bit joking because Rakia actually I think generally means more sort of the physical sense of the sky, you know, however they physically understood it, as opposed to like Shamayim, which is heavens, which is where God is, okay? So anyway, but nevertheless, he was at this high place. He wanted to daven. Maybe it was just Mincha time came or something. So I had to put down my bag. So I put it down in that window. And by the time I was done davening, I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. It had somehow disappeared. I put it in that window and then it disappeared. So Aminale, Ika Ganvihacha. I said to him, what are there like robbers here at the top of the mountaintop? Who's took my bag? So what?
Or maybe in heaven they're thieves.
In heavens there are thieves, right? That would be even worse, right? There's a little sign up by this window. We are not responsible for items left unattended. Okay. So Amar Li said to me, Hi Galgala Durakiyahu No. That is the wheel of the rakia that turns around. I'll describe it in a minute. Wait until tomorrow and you'll find it. Because basically what happens is, the way it works is, right, is that if you imagine, like, you know, it's also this whole question about like why when you see stars, right, what happens? Like you're seeing stars, let's say at night, and the stars seem to move, and then they appear at the same place at the same. Anyway, so this whole big thing moves around and comes back. You know, the Earth is stable, and the sky and the heavens sort of move around with the stars and with the moon and whatever it is, right? And maybe with the sun, and that's why the sun sets. The question is, the sun move independent of the rakia? So you put it in here. This whole thing, I guess the window remained, but the whole thing moved. So by now, your bag is over here, okay? It's part of it. By tomorrow, it'll come back there and come get it tomorrow, okay? So that's where.
How does the window stay put when the whole
I don't exactly get that. Maybe there's a window, you know, the moving contraption is separate from the, you know.
Like,
one inside
I don't know if
another.
you sew, but like there's like if you have needles and a thing. I mean, in that one the window is moving to get.
Oh yeah, that's I know what you're talking about.
But you can imagine something where the window's staying still and you're moving the needles
right.
to the whatever.
Yeah, you mean there's a cover that's stationary.
Yes,
and like, the moving thing moves underneath the cover.
Shabbat.
Yes,
it's the Shabbat lamp.
A Shabbat lamp. Yeah. Right. This Arab nomad that was showing him all the secrets of the desert.
Okay, but what do you make of this part? This bread basket? And
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Good. You want to give? Can you give us?
Wealth. It has to do with the Arab here. This is from the ground. It's the Yetzer Hara, trying to get the Torah scholars to work in the world as well, and then it's the whole thing about who gains wealth and who doesn't. It's all in the hands of Hashem.
Okay.
And then sometimes
so the bread basket is parnassa, and that you know, and that's also like, you know, fortune. It's like people sometimes rise and fall in terms of their worldly fortunes.
Sometimes they don't.
I see. Interesting. Okay. All right. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan Mishtai. Now we're done with the Arab nomad. Now we get rabbis telling about their sea tales, about the things that occurred to them when they were traveling by the sea. And by the way, it's interesting, the word mishtai. Mishtai was more like, you know, was told a story. It's a different type of a verb than like Rabbi Yochanan Amar or whatever. Anyway, Rabbi Yochanan told the story. Zimna Chada, one time, I was going on a boat. The Chazina Nahikivra, where you're talking about, again, big fish. I saw a particular fish or sea creature. The Avke L'Reisha Miyama, its heads came out of the ocean. The Damyan Eine Ketresiare, and its eyes looked like two moons. The Nofutz Mai Mitarte Zime, and water was flowing from its two nostrils. Ketre Mavre Desura, like these two rivers of Surah. Okay, that's not such a fantastical story. Rav Safra, I mean, I guess it depends if he literally means two rivers of Surah, like if he's saying that it was huge. Rav Safra Mishtrai, Rav Safra said, once I was going on a boat, And I saw a fish or a sea creature, that it stuck its head out of the ocean, and it had horns. And were written on the horns, I am just a small creature of the sea. Vina, and this little small creature was 300 parsangs. Okay, Azlina Lapuma de Livyosa. I'm sorry, this is still written on the horns. I am merely a small creature of the sea, and I am 300 parsangs long. Azilna Lapuma de Livyosa, and I am going into the mouth of the Livyosa. I'm just Livyosan's breakfast. Okay, so you can imagine how big the Livyosan is. Okay, Amar Avashi. Who is the Yamahu? Now, the fact that it had horns shows me that that was the goat of the sea. We have seahorses; they had sea goats. Okay, the bechisha, and it uses the horns to like dig in the ground of the of the ocean in order to find its food. The Islay Karne, and that's why it has horns. Rabbi Yochanan Mishtainer, Rabbi Yochanan said, once I was going on a boat, I saw a certain chest, like a box, treasure chest, exactly, that were affixed to it these amazing jewels, and was surrounding it certain types of fish, karsha, which were called karsha. Some think this means sharks. Okay, now shark, So there you go, the classic treasure chest surrounded with sharks.
That's the Hebrew word in modern Hebrew
for a shark. Yeah. Is okay.
Yeah.
Karsha? Keresh?
Keresh.
Okay, so we got to go get the treasure chest. So Nachis bar amorai la'asuye. So a diver, that's the word for a diver. We have it in other Gemaras. Bar amorai. I don't know where that word means. I don't know, but it means a diver. Maybe a diver went down la'asuye to retrieve it. And the shark sensed that somebody was coming to take the treasure chest. And it wanted to basically tear out his leg. The shark wanted to bite off his leg. So this diver threw a flask of vinegar, and it calmed the fish down. It stopped the shark from trying to attack it. So rather than having one of those harpoon things, you got a vinegar. Yes.
Bar amorai is a diver.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Latin. Mare means the ocean.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
M-A-R-E.
M-A-R-E is it?
Amare.
Amare. Interesting.
It's a Latin
Spanish.
Yeah. So it's a Latin word.
Interesting.
And they use it for the moon when they, the map of the moon, the Mar this, Mar that, the sea of such and such.
Right.
Oh, interesting. Okay, there you go. Thank you. I actually heard in Yom of Pesach, why is horseradish? This might be complete narishkeit what I heard, so this is maybe a popular etymology, but why is horseradish called horseradish? What does that have to do with horses? But apparently it was called the radish of the Mar, of the sea, because I don't know, maybe it grew by it and somebody became mare, which is horse or something. You can go ahead and see if that's correct. Anyway, but that's interesting for the Bar Morai. Okay, so anyway, we should think of Venochis. Nafik Basko Amar. Now he got the shark, he pacified the shark, neutralized the shark, wanted to retrieve the treasure chest. A heavenly voice came out, and Amarlan,
or sea.
Yeah, that's true, right? My Isluchu Bahade Kartali say the Vasayud Rabbi Chia ben Dosa. That is the treasure chest for the wife of Rabbi Chia ben Dosa. She's going to get that in the future time. She was very righteous and never wanted to benefit from her share in the world to come. That is fish that's going to be stored for her. The Atida Deshaya Tichla Bal Tzadikai La'amodasi. She in the end is going to, now I don't exactly get this, knit tcheles, sew tcheles in it for the tzaddikim in the world to come. What does that mean? That means it's stored with these precious cloths. And does tcheles here mean tzitzis? I mean, we just saw before that tcheles means tzitzis. So I'm not exactly sure what the point of that is.
What do you make it of it that it's in
the ocean? That's where you store the treasure chest for the world to come. It's supposed to in the heaven. Right. I don't know. David, you got anything interesting in the notes?
Comes from the ocean.
You'd have to read it more slowly. What? Tcheles comes from the ocean. That's a good point. Right.
But then she's going to do in the future, though.
Yeah, I don't know. What is she going to be? She's going to be the seamstress in the future? She's going to be make the tzitzis in the future?
That's the one who's going to find the tcheles so we can start reading.
Oh, she's going to find the tcheles. But in time of the Gemara, they knew where to get tcheles.
But they're knowing that we're not going to.
Okay, there you go. Okay, Rav Yehuda, he do
it. It has this idea that somebody wanting to get something that he deserves.
Well, that obviously.
Right.
That's right. But what about the wife and the tcheles? Okay.
So they have that story that about she refused the gift.
She refused the gift to the world to come. Right. Rev Yehuda Hindua. Rev Yehuda, the Hindu, or not Hindu, but the Indian from India, right? I mean, Hinduism really just means the religion of India. Okay, from India, Mishtai told the following story. Once I was going on a boat, and I saw a beautiful jewel, Tanina, that was surrounded by a sea serpent. So we sent down some diver to retrieve it. So the whole diving for buried treasure is a very ancient theme. Tanina kabayla mivlala. So then the sea serpent came and wanted to swallow up the diver. I'm sorry, not only the diver. Kamivla the sfinta was going to now attack the entire boat. Asa pishkansa. You might remember the pishkansa. We had this before. The raven that came that ate the sea serpent. What did the sea serpent eat in that story before?
A big frog.
A big frog. Right. Okay. So came this raven, paske l'reisha, cut off the head of the sea serpent. There is actually what is that bird there's a certain bird that's good for attacking. Is it scorpions or something? What am I thinking of? Anyway, this idea that there's like a bird that can attack like or certain. Anyway, I don't know. Anyway, the sea serpent came, cut off the head of the sea. The raven came, cut off the head of the sea serpent. Now, paske l'reisha ishab chumaya. Vavidama, and the water turned into blood. So there you go, echoing the Makas Dam Pesach theme. Okay. Also, maybe we can all read this thing as a metaphor for Pesach. What? Yeah. Well, that we meant last time. By the way, though, thinking about this, there is the case where is it in Navi where their Paro Necho says Tanin Hagadol? Yeah, no, but there's a later pharaoh in Tanakh that compares himself to a great Tanin, right? People know what I'm talking about. Right. So anyway, so here you have a Tanin being cut off and turning into blood. Let me just see if I can quickly find it. Asking Rabbi Google. Tanin Hagadol. I'm not finding it. Yeah, okay. Anyway. All right, moving on. Especially if Tanin is a crocodile. Anyway, so this maybe is some echo of the whole right, okay, you can take a look it up. Anyway, this could be some echo of that whole story. Anyway, cut off its head, and the whole water turned to blood. Vavudama, asa tanina chavre, so then its friend, sea serpent or crocodile came. Shaklasa took the head that had been severed, Vitalyale, and put it back on the body. Wait a minute, let me just finish.
Took the stone and put it
on. Took the stone
and hung it on the dead sea monster. That's what they're.
As opposed to took the head and hung it. I see. Took something. I thought it meant took the head. Wait a minute. Okay, wait. Let me just finish this. Either took the head or took the stone. I thought it meant took reaffixed the head to the body. The chaya, and then the sea monster or the crocodile, came back to life. Let's just finish this. So now that the sea monster came back to life, it wanted to once again destroy the boat because we were still trying to retrieve the stone. So then another bird came, paske l'reisha, cut off its head. Shaklua lahi eventava, and shadua l'svinta. So and then it took. So this might be now the diver.
Oh, not the bird.
No, it could be. No, I think the diver. It's not clear. Now took the stone and put it on the boat. We had a moment. He had like a shasa kosher, especially if the previous read was that the stone allowed the sea monster to resuscitate. So now you want to get rid of the stone before the sea monster comes back alive. So after the second bird cut off its head a second time, got the stone on the boat. Now we had stored with us in the boat for our meals. We had some salted birds. We put the stone on the birds. Okay, so maybe this is also why it was assumed before that it was the stone that revived the sea monster, because we put the stone on the birds, and then the birds came back to life, and they took the stone and they flew away. So this was a stone, I guess, a type of a Tchias HaMesim type of a stone. Okay, what was that? Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And that was also made me think of the whole, what was that first early Harry Potter with the basilisk? The basilisk or whatever. Okay, anyway, so that's what is clearly presaging is all the Harry
What do you make of all
What's the pasuk you have there, Michael?
No, just as Paro Melech is fine. It doesn't say which Paro.
But it doesn't say Tanina
No,
Gadol.
it does. That's the one I quoted there. Tanina Gadol Rabbi Stochi Rabbi Shara Marliya Rivani Esitini.
Right, but it doesn't use the word Tanin. It just says
Tanin Hagadol.
Tanin Hagadol, right? So Para is referred to as a Tanin Hagadol, especially if Tanin means crocodile. So one wonders, right? What is this? Is this about that we cut off? There was Yetzias Mitzrayim, the splitting. We went through. It's in the ocean, or whatever. But then the other powerful nations come. And and they and they sort of conquer the whatever what's the word I'm looking for, not exiles, what no well reanimate, yes, but I'm saying they we don't remain free in that way. We become re-subject to them, and so on. So and ultimately the search for the Tchias HaMesim and the future, whatever, that's being withheld from us until future time. That's my parish on this. Yes.
You want this?
Sure, go for it.
So this is based on Malbim and Bereshit 3:19. The ship is the person, and the precious stone is the intellect. And again, the Yetzer Hara.
Oh, I like my explanation much better. No, I'm serious. There's these echoes of Yetzias Mitzrayim.
Right,
we seem to destroy them. We go through the ocean, right? It's all about getting to, the ultimate redemption, the stone, which brings life. But ultimately, we get exiled again, and every time we think we have it in our grasp, it gets, taken away from us. That's my shot.
Or
yes.
The bird represents Hashem, meaning
coming from heaven.
Coming from heaven to do it, and then in the end, Hashem, we're enslaved to Hashem.
Oh, interesting. So Hashem is the one that comes and destroys the sea monster for us,
right.
But then in the end, right?
Like freedom, but
right.
Freedom.
There you go. Beautiful. All right. We should be writing our parish on the Agadah. I was thinking about that too. About the birds that came down by Avram. Okay. Tana Rabbanan. Masa, now we actually have a Breita. Masa, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, Shayu Baim B'Sfira, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, they were both one generation before Rabbi Akiva. They were Rabbi Akiva's Rebbeim. They were coming in a boat. Via Rabbi Eliezer Yashin, Rabbi Yoshua Neor. Rabbi Eliezer was sleeping and Rabbi Yoshua was awake. Nistazeh Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua started trembling. V'nina Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Eliezer woke up. What's the matter? Shayu Basav. I'm like, Maza Yoshua, Nizdazata. Why did you start trembling? I saw like a huge luminary in the ocean. He said to him, maybe you just saw one of the eyes of the Leviathan. Its eyes are like the eyelids of the morning, like the sun, like the luminary. Amar Ravashi, Amar Lihuna Bar Nasan. Lihuna Bar Nasan said to me, so now we're going to we've opened up a little bit, and we've already mentioned it before, the Livyasan theme, so that's going to come up. Okay, so Amar Lihuna Bar Nasan, Zim Lechada Have Kazina B'Madra, once I was going in the wilderness, V'Havi Atma de Bisra B'Hadan, and we had like a thigh of meat with us. Patachna v'nakrina, we opened it up, we removed the fat and the gita nosha, v'anachna aisbi, and we put it down on the grass, until we could get some chips of wood to make a fire and to roast it. Chalim atma, and while we were doing that, the leg revived, restored. It didn't start reanimating, but like the way we had opened it and taken it out, it sort of closed itself up. Okay, it was another like of a little Tchias HaMesim type of some things that have power to revive things. Okay, literally means it was healed. Chalim atma, v'tavinan, and then we roasted it. Kihadrin lebasar treisa yarche shata. When we returned after 12 months, chazinu lahani gumri, we saw the coals. Davi kamelachashi, they were still whispering, they were still burning. Okay, He asay lekami damemer. When I say him to a memer, Amali, he said to me, "Who is samteri have?" That grass was this special grass called samteri, which has this powerful restorative powers. So I guess it wasn't as good as the stone that actually brought the dead back to life, but actually it has some healing powers. And Hanu Gumri, and those coals, the Ritma.
Oh, it's a rotem tree. Rotem wood burns. There's that other story where
rotem where it burns very long.
Yeah, it burns for very long. There's another sugya in Sukkot where they went through the midbar to the pilgrimage to Yerushalayim.
Okay.
They come back a year later,
and the rotem is still burning.
Simmering.
Oh, there
it's
you
rotem.
go.
It's called a broom tree. It's
broom tree. Interesting. Okay. Let's read a little bit more. Now we're going to get into the whole, Livyasan discussions. God created the huge sea monsters. Here we translate it as the, antelope of the sea. This is the Leviathan, the snake of the rod, the Livyasan Nachash Aklason, and the Leviathan of the curved Leviathan, which is it's identified as the male and the female Leviathan. You can figure out the imagery. That day God will visit with his hard sword, and the end of the pasuk is et nachash b'riach et livyatan nachash b'riach v'livyatan nachash aklaton. I think it's the end of the pasuk. Okay, Amar Rav Yud Amar Rav. Kol ma shebarach Kadosh Baruch Hu be'olamo. Everything God created in His world, zocher v'nekeva b'ram. We're male and female. Okay, which is pretty funny because there are some animals, there are not whatever, some microbes or whatever, right? That are not just microbes, aren't there? Things like
some
lizards are only. Yeah. Anyway, okay.
Have both.
What?
Worms are both.
Worms are what are both male and female the same. But okay, Af Livyasan, even the Leviathan, Nachash Briach Livyasan Nachash Aklason, and the Leviathan, the curved Leviathan, Zachem and the Cave Abraham, we're male and female. The Omolinis cooking Zelazeh, if they were to ever actually copulate, Macharim and Golam Kulo, they would destroy the entire world with all of their progeny. Okay, what was God going to do? Meaning the point that He created male and female, I think there's a power to this, is because we're going to see they were even though they were never going to be allowed to copulate. So what would be the point of creating a male and female? Right? There's a sense of if you want to call it yin and yang. There's a sense of two parts of a whole, that everything has something that complements it, makes it whole, and so on. Even the Leviathan that never would actually be able to copulate, they were still created male and female. What did God do to prevent them from getting together? So Masakadosh Baruch Hu, Sirius as a Zachar, He castrated the male, and He killed the female. Now, of course, if He castrated the male, why did He have to kill the female? But okay, we'll see about that. And He salted it for the righteous, for the future, that they would now have some nice herring made out of the female Leviathan. Okay, He destroyed the sea monster, so it's only singular as opposed to taninim. So God created two, but He killed one. He killed the female. He let the male live. Okay. Okay. Where were we? Okay. Now the Avemos Bahare Elef. There's a pasuk in the Tehillim that refers to the animals of the 1,000 mountains, which is understood by Chazal as a reference to, this huge animal, the Shur Habar, that will also in the Asid Lava, we're going to have a very good shmorg. It's going to be for those that like meat, we'll have the Shur Habar. For those that like fish, we'll have the Livyasan. Okay, so anyway, I don't know about the vegetarians. Anyway, there's a certain joke about whatever, which I'll tell it offline about that. Anyway, okay. Even those huge beasts that also will be for the future, for us to feast on in the future. We're male and female. And they also were never going to be able to copulate, but nevertheless, they were created male and female. Were they ever copulate? They destroyed the whole world. What did God do? Sirius HaZachar, He castrated the male. Vitzinin Hanakeva, He cooled off the female. So at first I thought this meant He put her in cold storage, keep your meat in a refrigerator. It's better. I'd rather have refrigerated meat than salted meat. But apparently it means cooled her in a sense that to not make her able to bear children, but she still kept her alive. Of course, why you needed to do that once you castrated the male is not exactly clear. Okay, and also there, the females being kept for the righteous for the future to eat from them. I don't know, I guess we're not going to eat from the males. Okay, as it says, its strength is in its loins, that is the male. The onobis sarire bitno, and its strength is in its in the I'm not the bisrire. How do they translate that word?
Loins.
Yeah. No, after the loins.
Oh, strength is in its loins. This refers to the men.
Yeah, and what's the next part of the verse?
And its power in the navel of its belly.
The navel.
Navel.
Oh, the center of its belly. Zenikeva, obviously in terms of like referring to the womb and so on. Right. So anyway, that refers to these animals. So now just to end this one story. So why with the Leviathan did God have to kill the female Leviathan? Why not just cool her down? So dagim pritze. Now fish are very promiscuous. So even if she were to be cooled down, she would still want to copulate. Now I don't know who she's going to copulate with. Maybe with other fish that are not the Leviathan. What can I tell you? Anyway, with other, maybe it's a mammal. It's like a whale. Anyway, but maybe with other fish that are not her mate, because the male is castrated. Anyway, so cooling her down would not have worked. Okay, so why not, kill the male and whatever, and have the female alive? So the Gemara says, if you want, I could say Nikeva Malicha Mali. No, because the female fish, salted female fish tastes better than salted male fish. So we want the better fish for the future. And if you want, I could say, you created this Leviathan to play with, and according to the Gemara Brachos, it says God leaves 1 hour of the day to have, to just, I don't know, even God needs entertainment, so to play with the Leviathan. So since God is going to be playing with the Leviathan, so it wouldn't be appropriate for God, who is cast as male, to be playing with the female Leviathan. Okay, so the Gemara says, okay, fine. Now we got why that's what you did for the Leviathan. But fine. But now let's get to the big ox or whatever it is. So why not there too? Why not salt the female? Why are you cooling down the female? Why not kill her and salt her? Kivra malicha mali. No, salted fish tastes good. Pisra malicha, salted meat, lo mali is not as good. Some people like it, they like their beef jerky, but fresh meat tastes better. Okay, I think we will stop there for now. All right. To be continued with God and the sea creature.